Hello, welcome to The Whole Elephant. Thank you for joining me today. If this is your first time, welcome. If you've been with me on this journey all along, I appreciate you so much. Really fun guest today. Back in the day, I played college football. It's hard to believe that was 17 years ago, and with what I'm doing now in my life, it's hard to believe that I played college football at one point. Played is a relative term. I was on the team at least. My guest today is Coach Victor Santa Cruz. He's now the defensive coordinator at the University of Hawaii, but he was the head coach and defensive coordinator at one time at Azusa Pacific, where I played. And so I wanted to catch up with him, and a lot like we've been doing with other guests, since the 17 years since I played for him. What has he learned? How has he grown? How is he coaching differently? We watch the games on Saturdays, Sundays for the NFL. Actually, there's games on like every day now. We watch the games. But do we really know what these coaches are going through, the work it takes, the stress it puts on families? What kind of mindset do you have to balance your life in this situation, in this profession? So sit back, relax, and I hope you enjoyed the chat. Coach, what's going on, man? Welcome to The Whole Elephant. Thanks for doing this.
You know what? It's Eric McClanahan. He calls, I answer. All right. You tell me you got the whole elephant. He's the guy who always would remind me when I told him, how do you eat a whole elephant? One bite at a time.
One bite at a time.
And he's also the guy that snuck hot dogs out during practice, and he would eat them when he wasn't taking reps. So
there's a lot of stories I have of those days. I was not necessarily the best player you had, but
hey, Western New Mexico, you were all we needed to make that win happen.
My moment of glory.
It was a great moment. That helped us win and go forward and have a great season. A semifinal run that should have kept going to the Natty.
Yeah, man, dude, you're in Hawaii. Yeah. Was it always a dream? That's your alma mater. Was it always a dream to be back there?
Yeah. It's always been on my heart, and when I left after I graduated. Let me take it back. Okay. You have to know the big picture.
Yeah.
Let me go to my recruiting process. All right. And in that recruiting process, what ended up happening was I'm getting all these letters from everybody across. Back the old day was you got handwritten letters. You didn't have the internet, no huddle. You used to send VHS tapes out. Actually, those were even hard to come by. So I remember getting a letter from the University of Hawaii, and my coach gives it to me. I just kind of throw it in my locker, and the guy next to me, my locker mate, the guy next to me, he says, "Aren't you going to open it?" Eric, I tell him dead in the eye. I look and I says, "I will never go to Hawaii." Because I'm thinking I'm going to this other big whatever school, packed school, whatever. And then what ends up happening is everybody drops me. After the signing day, Hawaii comes and they have an offer for me, and I take it. And this was the absolute best place for me. I'm glad I only had this choice, because my naiveness, my young and dumb self, you're thinking about, this, because what everybody says, that's a better school. I wasn't wise enough to make that decision to come here, but the Lord did it for me. And I tell you what, this was the best place. This place is awesome. The people here, the way they love football. Obviously, I enjoyed the school, got an economics degree from here, and I owe a lot to this state. So I say that in the dream, when I left here, I didn't know I was going to get into coaching. And I was just kind of doing that little, that wandering of after college, what do you do type of thing. And,
right.
When I got into coaching, I just started thinking about, what if I went back there one day? And then the dream became more of eventually in my spirit, I felt like it was a calling of one day I would do that. I had a peace in my heart that one day I would do that. How, what capacity, I didn't know, but I always kind of felt like, man, one day I'm going to do this. And that one day came suddenly when Coach Graham got the job. And it was like, wow, that was absolutely a dream come true. And it's just kind of felt like the Lord's just been so good to me about pressing things in my heart. And as I walk in faith towards those, is knowing, man, he keeps ordering my steps. So yeah, it's great to be back. It's obviously picked the 1 year to come back. That it was football was probably the hardest.
Brutal. Yeah. Do you find that when you're recruiting the mainland, that's the right term, right?
We'll use that. Yeah.
When you're recruiting out here, do you find that that's still a stigma? That guys don't want to go all the way out to Hawaii?
No,
it's kind of in no man's land, or has that changed?
It's changed. I think, obviously Hawaii's done tons since that time.
Yeah.
To to demonstrate obviously the strength of the brand by winning and going with the Sugar Bowl with Colt Brennan, God rest his soul. Yeah. Obviously we won the Holiday Bowl. So the brand of Hawaii has changed so much since my time to where now we actually are a national recruiting brand. So we can call anyone in any state, and I think we can get them on the phone. But because of the people are really, they know about us now. Now on the flip side of it, you still, there's always that body of water between us and the mainland. Yeah. Sometimes that gets people a little bit, they want to be able to, so when I say this, that when we recruit, while we can get the attention of the nation, we're still looking for that special warrior type of young man who's really waiting, on a mission with life to go out and do something different.
Right. We got to talk about, the whole elephant. We got to talk about the elephant in the room a little bit. Yeah. And, how sad we all are that APU shut down their program this year. Is that something you saw coming?
No, I was blindsided to be, and that's probably the more, what I felt was probably the saddest part of me leaving. Not that I have any special power or whatever, but you invested so much. It means so much to all of us. The lives that were changed. Yeah. You felt like, man, I could have done something maybe, but it was just a shock. And it's short-sightedness in my opinion. Yeah. It was real short-sightedness. It was, I think, they end up, they just were looking a few steps ahead instead of the big picture. I think, that football program did a tremendous job of branding this university, giving the university that special appeal of a Christian education, but a whole college experience wrapped up. It was a large school event with a small school boutique atmosphere. And I think there's just something that was so rare and distinguished about that program and what it did for the school that, when you're in the midst of COVID and I guess people aren't thinking straight, it's hard to see tomorrow. I think they really lost an asset that would have kept them going for the foreseeable future of that brand recognition. Now, and I'm obviously they'll say, well, he's just a football coach. What's he going to say? Say, yeah, I'm also someone who understands marketing. Yeah. And there's no differentiating factor about the university because so location wasn't their deal. So if you're saying
doesn't Azusa sound like it's supposed to be by the beach, but it's totally not.
Remember Ed Self thought he was right, and I love it. He thought it was by the beach. So
Azusa, that's got to be right by Zuma and those places, right?
Azusa, and when you add Pacific, it must be a beach community. So anyway, and I love the people there. It's. I always look at it, I guess the way I wrap it up, because people say, are you being negative? I said, no, I'm just being, I think it's just more one of those Paul and Barnabas moments where it's like, you know what? I disagree. We're going to go a different path. I wish you still the best.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I think the hardest part was, you left leaving a legacy, but then you left it in perfect hands. We all believed in what Rudy was going to do with it.
Oh yeah.
The next head coach. We knew that it was going to continue the legacy that we had all felt like we had built. And then it just got ripped away. And that was the hardest part.
Yeah. And that's the thing. I felt great leaving it there. I'm like, this is awesome. Rudy gets to take it over. And not only Rudy, he still had the Bo Beatty's there. And, and to see it happen like that, it was just like, gosh, because I was able to see financials and stuff, and that's where I'm like going, it's not a drain. It was actually, from how I saw it and everything, it was making money. And it was just, but, reallocation of assets, I guess, how they saw it. And so, it's just disappointing. But like I said, it's Paul and Barnabas moment. So I wish them well as their ministry changes. Their trajectory changes. You just want the best for the kingdom, and you hope that they're still going to be part of advancing it.
Sure. Let's get back to you, man. You go from APU to a D1 program. What's the culture change? What's the lifestyle change being at a D1 program?
Well, the change is dramatic, I think, because first and foremost, Azusa Pacific was such a different, rare, distinguished type of culture. So now you're going from what was there, and that wasn't just me, that was all the coaches, the players, the administration. So you're going to, no matter what, you're leaving there, you're going to have significant change. And so the significant change here, it's got its own beauty in its own right, not just geographic beauty, but the sense of the people here, the players, the coaches. So kind of a time in where I'm at in my life, it was like, this is really good for me, because you're young enough to really have a hard transition, a dramatic transition, better yet. But you're also mature enough and old enough to say, you can bring some value to some things. So I being with Coach Graham, I think he's one of the smartest football coaches I've ever been around. And so, I was a head coach for 14 years. And the hardest part about that is that you had to constantly be the person with answers. Mm-hmm. So you're trying to get your professional development as much as you could outside of it. But when you're working for somebody like Coach Graham, your professional development's happening every day. And it's, you got somebody above you that's has a lot of wisdom when it comes to football. And he's also, this is his, he's done transitions and led a multiple Division I football program. So, there's a lot to grow there. So, but it's, also being, it's Division I football. And so, we need to win. You need to, every Saturday is not just a game. It's a huge event for the state is counting on you. And so you got to put the hours in to make sure you're ready for that moment.
It happens all the time in football where, either someone's a head guy and gets promoted up a level to a coordinator position, or a guy's a head guy and gets fired and then ends up a coordinator position somewhere else. Is it a weird transition to go from being the guy in charge to not being the guy in charge, just setting schedules and all those things?
Yeah, that was weird in the sense that I had to tell my brain, you don't have to worry about that. You can actually go, you can go deeper, because I kept thinking about all these other things. Like, that's not my concern right now. And your role is to go deep with your players and understanding how to coach them, how to mentor them. So everything that I was probably jealous of my own coaches back as a head coach, like, man, you guys get all this time to really research football and spend time with the players. Now I have that. And it was just kind of weird to like, oh, okay. Yeah. All right. This is it. And so how do I go deep in this? How do I go deeper in researching split zone to make sure I really understand all the intricacies about it? So it was great that way. And then obviously now on the recruiting side of it, you're the one, you just got to make sure you're making all those phone calls. So it's good. It's I'm really enjoying it. And, I love, obviously it's for my alma mater being there to know that every time I'm working, it's a chance to give back to a place that gave me so much. And I think I really enjoy, obviously, the Polynesian community means a lot to me, and to be able to, frontline serving the community through football, because it means a lot to us, is that it's just obviously a dream come true, but it's hard work, no doubt. And it's one of those things that you see why the Lord took them out of Egypt, and you're excited. Hey, we're out of Egypt. Great. And you're going through Park City. Now it's like, okay, well, guess what? We're going through a wilderness now to grow you up some more. So that's been good for me.
Good. I was able to ask a similar question to my old youth pastors, and I want to kind of ask you similar questions, because it's hard to believe, but it's been 17 years since I played for you.
17 years.
2004.
Wow.
Like
wow.
It's been a long time.
Has it been 17 years? That feels like yesterday.
Yeah,
man.
I mean,
I don't think like that. I like this too.
It's been a long time.
My world.
How did you coach me that you coach differently now?
How did I coach you that I coach differently now?
What are the philosophies? What are the things that maybe you do differently than you did 17 years ago?
Here's the big one. You mature, right? Remember when you mature. So it's all different. But my journey in the last, in that time, if you could mark what was something that was significantly altering in your career field, altering in your process, altering in how you go and coach. I grew up in the area of emotional intelligence. And I actually sought out to get trained in that area and to say, okay, this is a strategic edge, a strategic advantage that I could have as a coach, because I learned that my one style, which was effective to a point, was actually demoralizing to others. And it was probably even more just ineffective with a lot of others. And so my style, while on the macro sense, is like, hey, you were a successful defensive coordinator at the time, and you're going to head coach. It got me to the point, but I wasn't effective. It didn't sustain success. So a friend of mine named Pat Introversato, who runs Iron Coaching, and him and I got together in 2010 because when I became a head coach, I was so enthusiastic about it. Here I am, finally a chance to do it. But I was a bad head coach. The great defensive coordinator, bad head coach, and I had the record to prove it. So we were at 4 years of just wow, we can't turn a corner. And so Pat was instrumental in helping me understand that. He's like, I understand your heart, what you say you want to do. You really care about these players. You really want to build champions while pursue championships. But while you want to be right, no one's hearing you. And so the whole question that I kind of came up with is like, do you want to be right or do you want to be heard? Because I can be right all the time, but if they're not hearing me, then whatever it was I had, this information that is right and maybe critical, it's not being translated. Communication takes a hearer as well. But my lack of emotional intelligence was shutting people off. I wasn't able to translate the information I had. And so that was a big marker and a big change for me. And if you look at from 2010 and beyond that record, you see a huge transition of winning percentage going up significantly. And that was big for me and the staff, me and other players. It helped. It impacted recruiting. It impacted so much to where we could finally take what was this heart I had, the heart of the program, the mission statement of the program, and now translate it to where it's translate it to where it was effective and impactful to other people, not just people of my style.
Right. Do you think that that's happening across the country with football, with sports in general? Do you think that we're getting away from the era of just yelling and screaming and focusing on the individual player more? I feel like my generation was kind of the turning point, who had a foot in both camps, maybe.
Yeah, I think your generation was bringing that awareness that, this industry, we essentially came out of a paramilitary type of model. Like we always, used to, like when I was growing up and playing football, there was all these things, the metaphors of war, and this is how, and you saw the way they tried to drill players was like, it's very like boot camp, hell week, hell, all those things. And so I think what ends up happening is, one, this is not war. It's significantly different. It's a game, and it's, and my dad was in the Marine Corps for 24 years. And so it's like, listen, he shed blood in Vietnam. And so this is not war. Okay. But it's serious. Now we care about it. That's the thing. Right. We care about it. It's significant. It means a lot to communities. It means a lot to me and to all the coaches in it. So you just need to translate. It's like, okay, we're at a different time, and the NCAA is seeing it as well as how we run practices. I mean, camps are completely different. We don't have 2-a-days and pads anymore. Or I think you had 3-a-days, right? I think we did some 3-a-days back then.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, wow, that was crazy. But you're seeing now is that with the individual, the way our world's going, it's and you probably have a better word for it than I do, but I can see like everything's becoming individualized. Siri brings up music that you like, suggestions on your YouTube searches, so the world's being tailored to individuals. Now, I don't like that because I think what ends up becoming is it limits growth. It limits exposure to other ideas. All it does is, to me, I think it just serves whatever your idea is and enhances it. So I think it's going to limit who we grow as people. But I say on the flip side of it is that if you don't know how to take your message and articulate it to the motivational style of a different individual or listen to what their style is, then you're not going to be heard. Yeah. So I constantly am saying, hey, do you want to be right or do you want to be heard? I always use the example of saying, okay, if we're going to go overseas with our great business idea that we know works, that we know it's, oh man, this is like money maker business idea. And if we don't understand the language of these potential investors, then I don't care how right we are, how great the idea is, they'll never hear it. And so the same thing is with emotional intelligence is, I need to be able to listen and interpret. I know, okay, who are they? So how do I take this message and translate it so that they can hear it? And now they buy into the mission. So,
when you have like a new crop of freshmen coming on the team, right? How long do you feel? Is it different for every individual? How long it takes you to feel out what each player needs from you?
No, it used to be, but now with the training, and Pat's really good at this, and him and I have been doing a lot of work with athletics, is you can pretty much pick up within about first 10 minutes, knowing the questions. Okay, I see what his value system is. Not value system of his religion or, what he wants, but I'm saying about how his motivation is in his motivation is filtered is a better way of saying that. And so is he somebody who says, hey, I see the world how I help people. Some people like the world, I want it really ordered and analytical. Some people are just say, I see the world through achievement only. Other people see the world and say, I want to see a lot of options. And then you start to hear blends of all that. And so now as you do that, it's not manipulation. It's just, I'm paying attention. I'm paying attention. I'm listening, and I value the differences of people. Because I've learned in my career now, I don't need to surround myself with people just like me. That's not going to get things done. I need to surround myself with people that have different motivational styles, filters, because that's how we're creating the best synergy, the best team. Right. Because there are things that they see that I can't see.
No, that totally makes sense to me. I mean, in high school, I had the hard-nosed coaches. I was called every name in the book, and when you're at a Catholic high school, you're kind of like, I don't think you should be calling me that. But like, I never understood why I was going out to practice anxiety riddled with a pit in my stomach, absolutely scared to go out to practice, while the guy next to me was thriving and had D1 scholarships and was getting pumped up, and it made me feel like an outsider. And so I totally get that from your standpoint. And I think when I went to APU, I think Coach Shinnick ended up being the perfect antidote of what I needed to see from a coach, and, I think the way that I would approach it in that era at high school, I would be labeled as soft, when really I just needed to be talked to in a different way. And that's not soft, that era I feel like is going away, moving towards what you're talking about.
Which I hope for, because I think, what we don't want to do, we don't want to lose participants in football. And
you're already losing enough.
We're losing enough. Right? Exactly. And the thing about it is that, if you're going to do high school football, if you're going to do college football, you're stepping up to the challenge. It costs a lot of time. there's nothing quote soft. You're showing commitment. You're showing tenacity. You're showing courage, because this game is just so demanding.
Yeah.
Every 100, let's just say whatever dollar invested in time and commitment in football, you're going to get 2 cents back, basically.
Right.
But it's just, but it's so. And so I say that in the sense of because we barely play any games, we do a lot of practice.
Right.
But if you take the lessons that can be learned in football, it's awesome. And so, I think that old school guard, it's starting to, you're seeing the limited results. The more it goes on now, the transfer portal is going to be a real big time truth teller about a staff in the sense of it, because, now they can just leave right away. Now I
wanted to ask you about that next. I mean, you talked a little bit about how the focus is on the individual, and now with all social media and stuff, every person needs to be their own brand, and you see it all the time even in recruiting. You got to have the perfect "I'm committed" logo and graphic and all these things. Do you find it harder to bring kids in and gel as a team, especially with things like, how do you keep the third string quarterback from not jumping in the transfer portal? Do you feel that as a coach that sense of individualism is becoming a hard thing to fight against?
Well, I think you better be aware of it, and initially you go, it's hard. But I think instead of, taking it in the sense of it's hard, it's more of, it's a brand new dynamic that you better be paying attention to. Now, how do you pay attention? Well, you don't, for lack of a better word, coddle. You don't say, pacify the individual to make them feel good all the time. It's not, you can't do that. You got to, we got to build a team.
Right.
So how do you communicate and develop trust? Trust doesn't mean I'm giving you your way. Trust means that we're walking in agreement, and that you're saying, I'm willing to take your hand, metaphorically, and walk along and accept your help and direction you're going into. So how do you do that? Well, and one of the things I appreciate about Coach Graham, because it means a lot to me, is that we're always talking about that. Hey, you got to be about the players, about the players, about the players. Now we don't change the standard for the players, but you do need to know who the individual is, and you don't need to be mother effing them. You don't need to be, just like you said, your coaching staff that what you had in high school. I don't know these gentlemen, but how you said, that's not going to last long.
No.
So, there's in college football, especially in Division I, there's a lot of money on the line. But I think there was a lot of money on the line at APU too, because it was an enrollment driver. So I would say this is that you need to be able to know the individual, be aware of them, have the one-on-one conversations, have self-awareness. The beginning step of emotional intelligence is being self-aware. And once you're self-aware, and then your own blind spots, then you become other aware, and you can start to have that dialogue. So it's a different time, man. Now the one-time transfer rule is open to college football, which I'm fine with. I think if a young man doesn't want to stay and feels like, hey, I need to go somewhere else, then we want to wish him the best, because part of the recruiting process, there's a lot of time. I think some young men feel pressured into you're in a certain place. So you're 17, 18 years old, so you're growing up.
Well, I mean, not to mention the fact that coaches just can leave whenever they want, right? You get recruited by a guy that might not even be there the next year.
Yeah, that's so I mean, if I have all of a sudden I like the coach and my son says, Dad, this new coach doesn't like me or just is just not a good fit, well then I mean, I see that. So at the end of the day, I think if you're in a coaching profession, yes, it's a profession. Yes, you need to win. That's fine. I mean, everybody needs to win in life, but do right by the athlete. Do right by the athlete. You're going to do right by the long haul, and I think you're going to win more games than lose when that happens.
Yeah. Do you ever? I want to talk about faith in God and stuff, but first, I just want to ask this question: do you ever take a step back and think, my entire livelihood is based on 18 to 22-year-olds performing on a football field? Like, does that ever frighten you? Does that ever,
yeah,
these guys that you're just trying to keep away from parties, that you're trying to get them to do the best they can. Like your entire livelihood is based on these kids, man.
Wow. And there goes my day. There goes my day. I was doing just fine till you told me that. So, oh man, you know what? Honestly, for me, it's simply a calling, and so I don't, it is, the Lord has my life in His hands, and so I love it. I love the challenge of working with these guys. So, you can frame it the way you framed it, and you can go like, honey, only mac and cheese tonight because we don't know the next thing. I get it. But I don't know. For me, I have a real peace, and I know this the component of faith that we talk about. I'm called to this. This is the God opened these doors. This isn't me saying, man, I did all this. Now look at it. Now I had to walk through doors. I had to put in hours, but that's being faithful to your calling. Yeah. But I know this is that I'm called here. And if for some reason God says, nope, sorry, your keys don't work anymore, then it's like, you know what? I'm going to be your sidekick on the elephant show, whatever, it's like, it's like, but I don't know. I think I'm just at peace where God's called me. And that's kind of how it's always worked for me. Cause but APU, I mean, there was, like I said, there was always that deal. I remember being called in and saying, man, you're not doing well. What's going on? And it's like, I got to fix this. And it forced change. So I'm just here to grow and keep going and do and be faithful. If I'm faithful, let God, He'll handle for me.
You go from a Christian university where you can literally build the entire program around faith, around God, around a university that supports that to a public D1 school. How does that change what you're able to do? How does that change your approach and all those things?
I mean, the thing is that was good. I worked for FCA before I went into coaching. So that really helped me understand navigating how do you honor the laws of the land from the public school atmosphere, but yet still without watering down, share the gospel. And so, I was able to learn a lot about the law stuff there. And so the bigger thing for me, even having played in a public school, I look at the impact I had, the ministry I had was I just lived it out every day, and living it out every day really provided, one, people got to see like, okay, that guy's real. There's something different about him. And then two, it created a lot of organic conversations that they would just come and sit down next to me on a flight. So my teammates would sit down on a flight next to me and then they start talking. Hey, let me ask you a question. Let me ask it. It was great. So, I know this is that the gospel is there are no walls for the gospel. I know that countries try to keep it out, but God can break through anything. And so why we have this, obviously there are governances all over public schools that prohibit certain ways, certain styles. On the voluntary side of it, people can say whatever they want to. And, and so I think that first and foremost, I need to live out and be who God says I am in front of people. A sinner saved by grace that is just relying on Him and letting His light and love shine through me. And I think at APU, I still had to do the same thing. I mean, you were there. There's some people that you're like, it's Christian school, but you don't seem like there's much light and love inside of you.
Sure.
And so if the gospel's not really in you, it won't come out of you. And so
I think it was St. Francis of Assisi who said, share the gospel, and if necessary, use words.
Yeah.
You can still share the gospel with what you're doing. What are the core principles, ideas, concepts that you get from scripture, that you get from your faith, that you're able to take out there to the field? And maybe if kids are coming from a situation like I came from, or, coming from a rough life background, whatever, what are those principles that make you feel like you're different out on the field for those guys?
Always 2 Timothy 1:7 is always the one thing for me that I think shapes the ministry of coaching for me, because it spoke to me as a teenager who was battled with, had some really hard times as a teenager before I got saved. And, I had some suicidal moments. It was, where, you dealt with fear, you dealt with, doubt in yourself, you dealt with, identity crisis of, I really I loved football, the players in high school, but it became almost this security blanket for me because it gave me an identity. I didn't know what it was, but at least it made me look macho in front of other guys. It made me seem attractive for girls. It gave me some popularity. So here was this asset I had that I think it's making me, am I okay now? And then when it was going to be, when the house of cards came falling down, I realized that football can't do that for me either. So a guy named Miles McPherson shares the gospel with me in my high school, and I get saved in my high school. And I mean, I was like, man, lights came on. I really understand, for me, that born again experience. I felt like, man, immediate, there's this change. But anyway, I say that the scripture is given to me is that 2 Timothy 1:7, that God did not give us a spirit of fear, but of power, love, and self-discipline. And so it shapes the ministry of coaching for me, because I realize that every human being has got fear in the root of it. Fear, I think it drives a lot of people's success, or perceived success, the fear of losing. I hear coaches all the time say, I'm more afraid of losing than I have more desire to win. I'm more, and so the fear is this constant animal speaking at you.
Yeah, I get that. You lose, and then all of a sudden your family's got to pack up again. That totally makes sense.
Right. So, and it's like, well, God didn't give me that spirit. And matter of fact, just most recently, I was just praying, and God was telling me, hey, I'm, Psalm 23, the Lord is my shepherd. And I started thinking about that, going, all right, everything that a shepherd is. And it's like, you know what, honestly, when I'm in my bad moments, I think I'm living as if the shepherd is far away from me. But that fear comes in when it's like, yeah, you're not here. I got to take care of myself. What I got to do? And it's like, well, no, you're the shepherd. So that means I'm not far from you. You're here, there. You're looking out after me. You're strengthening me. You're going to defend me. You're going to. And so when I know that, hey, that spirit of fear who knocks on everybody's door, and sometimes we welcome them in, and we welcome them in a little too long, it's that's not from God. And then I go, wait a minute now. He gave me a spirit, but of power, love, and self-discipline. So when I'm feeling weak, it's like, oh, he gave me power over the situation that I'm in. Love. All right. How do I love? Obviously, Corinthians talks about what love is, and I got to challenge myself. Am I really loving right now? I know this, a real warrior loves. That's why they do it. There's, then it's also self-discipline means that, what, when I feel like I'm being handled by all these habits and moments that are getting the best of me, God's like, you know what, you have the discipline to do that. There's spirits in you. So I don't feel defeated. So as an athlete, when you say the great teams are when they operate in courage, they operate they take their power, they pour it out for each other. They love each other. Fourth and inches, a team that loves each other, they're going to win that rep. And then self-discipline means that, listen, we can count on you all the time. That means you're tough. What is tough? You do the right things longer. That's a self-discipline. So that really filters how I coach, when I coach, who I coach, and I hope that translates through them. They can walk away with something that, honestly, I'm clinging to every day. I'm driving to every day. Because I know, really, if it wasn't for the Lord, I'd be that 16-year-old scared boy who was driven to suicidal thoughts that had an identity crisis.
Yeah, I'm fired up. I'm gonna go check to see if I have any eligibility left. I'm ready to go. Let's go. I know another big part of your faith, another part of how I would imagine you would define a warrior man, would be responsible to your family. Yes. Your wife and kids are out there with you.
Yes.
D1 has a lot of time responsibilities. As a coach, as a man of God, how have you been able to balance your family life out on the island?
I'll tell you what, they're having a great time.
They're tan. They know how to surf now.
They're surfing. They're loving it. The other morning, I I usually leave. I'm out of the house before 5, right? In there, and so it was after 5, and my daughter gets up. This is before school ended, and so she walks up. She looks at me. She goes, "What are you doing here?" I'm like, I can't. I can go in a little bit later today. I was like, she gave that look like, you got to go to work, keep our lifestyle going, would you? They're great, and I think it's what's been amazing is obviously the Lord's the center of our life, and we have a very unique, close family, and so I don't have hobbies. I do football, and my family's my hobby. So I'm trying to be very intentional. I get my energy from hanging around with them. So we're at a unique stage of life because now my son, who's a freshman here, which is, I get to spend more time with him because he actually works in the football office. So that's good. And then my daughter is going to be going away.
He's that old?
College.
Come on.
Yes, he's that old. Oh. So think about that. Yeah. He is that old. That's that old.
Great. I can picture him waddling around the football field after practice.
Yeah, now he's waddling around the football field carrying cameras.
Amazing.
Yeah, and so I'd say this. I'm very blessed that the Lord, helped us have a family this close. Now, my wife. I say this. The intentionality is when my wife and I got married. It's kind of, we had an agreement that we said, we want to, 1, walk with God, and then 2, we want our kids to really have a great family. And so, we made the sacrifices at times in the planning to keep her at home. That helped out a lot. So, having a 1-income family early on, there's some times where I go, man, I'd love to be able to go to the movies, but I can't. But the bottom line was, I think we were able to fortunately God provided, and I think he honored that time that we had. Kids are always growing up still. I still have my parents calling me, "Are you okay?" So, I'm sure that I'm not out of the woods. I'm still raising kids no matter how long,
Man, I appreciate you taking the time to do this. I'm going to let you get back to work because I don't want Coach Graham calling me or writing a bad review on this podcast or something for taking you away today.
Hey, the lunch break was well worth it to do this. Yes.
I appreciate you, man. Hey, can we end with one thing? Can you do the haka for us real quick? Or
no, you don't want me to disrespect it that way.
I appreciate you, brother. Thank you so much for doing this, man.
Yeah, all right, brother. Love you too. God bless you.